So you have the 2.5G chip
halfway there
in you.
Yep.
So your internet is not as good as my phone's internet.
Not yet. Mm-hmm.
But then in April, it'll be just as good as my phone.
Right. In 4 weeks, I'll have the full 5G chip.
So you'd be
right in there.
A walking Wi-Fi. Right?
I guess so.
Yeah.
And I also won't get COVID.
I mean,
well, I won't get severely ill if I get COVID.
Yeah, you can still get it. But
yep. I'm very excited. I feel relief. I was a little bit anxious about, I mean, even though in my logical brain and understanding and knowing, what the experts say, I still was getting not really a straight answer from my midwives when it came to getting the COVID vaccine while pregnant, simply because I think they just can't, pregnant women weren't included in the clinical trials. So even though there seems to be pretty widespread agreement that there's no red flags or evidence to indicate that it would be an issue, they can't point blank say, yes, you're good, it's 100% safe, because they just don't have the data. Right. But once I got it, I was just immediately super relieved.
I'm surprised people aren't making a bigger deal of it and aren't crying
when they get it.
Yeah. Maybe the second shot they do, or the Johnson & Johnson one they do.
Right. That's how I feel. It's like I'm finally starting the process, but it's a 6-week process before, I still have 6 more weeks before I can really feel comfortable to, hug my friends and family and go out to dinner or whatever.
Welcome to While She's Napping. I am Adam.
And I'm Cindy.
And hey, happy spring to this side of the hemisphere.
Mm-hmm.
Happy fall to the other side?
I have no idea.
Right?
We really should get educated on that, because we always
I think
speculate.
Australia is not celebrating, but experiencing fall.
Yeah, I know the weather patterns are reversed in a lot of
in the southern hemisphere.
Parts of the world are different than what we're on, but I don't know how their seasons are actually, named.
Well, hey, it's got to be autumn there.
I guess. I don't know.
To all our listeners in Australia, we know you exist.
Tell us what time of year it is.
Yeah, is it still called autumn? Or is it called something strange?
Yep.
It is springtime here, and it's feeling good.
Yes. And all our friends in California who it's been 75 and sunny all year round.
It's just spring all the time.
Yeah.
So, you got the vaccine, or at least half of it, and it's springtime on the same day.
Yes.
It's pretty good.
And the weather's beautiful this weekend. We got to spend a lot of time outside, and we got to see 2 of our friends who are fully vaccinated.
Yep.
So we were safely able
maskless?
Yep. Outside. We went to the park, but it was really great to socialize without so much anxiety.
It's the first time I've hugged someone, not you or our child,
in
a year.
Yeah.
And I texted my buddy on the way. I said, I might cry.
Yeah.
Touching someone for the first time outside of my household.
Right. And we got donuts.
Oh, yeah. You should post that.
Oh, I will. Yeah. My picture's not great because I was just in a hurry to eat them. So I took a quick picture, but you'll get the gist.
Sure. All right. So today we're going to, I guess, circle back to cancel culture, because it's a hot button issue now with Mr. Potato Head and Dr. Seuss. I wonder if is Mr. Potato Head, is that a
you mean the
New
way
England
they pronounce
thing?
it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Mr. Potato Head kid.
I don't know. We'll have to see what people not from New England think of the way that we say it.
English proper people, Mr. Potato Head and Dr. Seuss, they're blowing up the interwebs with their choices. Not mandates. No one called for this. We'll break it down, but their choices, as well as Chris Harrison.
Yes.
Of The Bachelor and The Bachelorette.
Look at you, Mr.
I didn't know
bragging
if it was
about
Chris Harris or Chris Harrison.
Right. I'm just saying, you bragging about being the Bachelor champion.
When? When?
2 seasons in a row, but you don't even know the name of the host.
When did I brag?
You pay no attention.
When did I brag?
Okay, just ask Chris and Sarah, our league mates.
The babes.
who live in California and have a 3-hour time difference.
That's not
and you
bragging.
text them you wake up in the morning and put your championship belt on and text them videos and pictures what for them is like 4 a.m.
Well, okay, first of all, they've posted videos of them running at the ass crack of dawn.
Sure.
So maybe they need some motivation. They see me with the belt.
And you think that's what they want to wake up to?
I didn't even realize I had the belt.
Oh my God.
I didn't realize.
Anyway, we digress. But
sure.
Chris and Sarah, I've been meaning to apologize to you for the early texts that he's been sending.
I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry at all. So we're going to, if you circle back into the archives, we do have a previous episode on cancel culture. It wasn't such a hot button issue then. It permeated throughout the year. But, now that there are things and, Eminem, Gen Zs are trying to cancel Eminem. Good luck with that. It's coming back to the fold. So we sort of wanted to revisit it and touch on the sort of the things that are, on people's minds politically, sociologically when it comes to cancel culture. But before we do, we'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for listening. If you're here for the first time, welcome. If you'd like to catch that episode, you don't need to pause this one right here and circle back. You can listen to that one after this is done. And moreover, we encourage you to go into the archives, and if you see a topic of discussion that you find to be interesting, please feel free to give it a listen. Most, if not all, of these episodes are timeless, so we appreciate it if you just go at it. Dig in. Have fun. We are approaching 1 year of podcasting. Actually, a year. By the time this episode is released, it will be 1 year since the trailer was dropped. I believe it was March 22nd, 2020 is when the trailer was dropped. So in that regard, sure, it's been a year of While She's Napping. However, next week is when we will celebrate the full year of this podcast being alive. We went a year strong. I am proud of it. So we should have approximately 52 episodes for you to listen to. And we love them all. So we thank you for listening. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the show. We are on all your favorite podcatchers, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcast. Pandora, we're there. Amazon Music, I guess, we're there. Maybe even Napster. I don't know. I don't fucking know. Maybe. Just subscribe to the show. And if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, please take the time. Give us 5 stars and a quick review. All the feedback that we've got from last week's episode regarding your personal story with having a miscarriage was very well received. And obviously, we take no, how do I put this? We don't take pride in the fact that we're talking about something so devastating, but at the same time, we are, at least I am proud of you for putting yourself out there in a vulnerable position to discuss it. So it's sort of a two-way street. We don't, it's not something we brag about, but it's something that needs to be at least addressed.
Yeah. I mean, that's my whole thing, is just trying to normalize talking about it, because the only reason I had the support that I did was because I was made aware of other people who had been through it.
Right. Yeah. So if you want to take the time to listen to that episode, we encourage you to do so. And we thank everybody for personally DMing us on the Instagrams or sharing the episode. Meant a lot to us, and I'm sure it meant a lot to you.
Yeah, it did.
Speaking of the Instagram, if you want to get in touch with us, we are on social media.
Yes, so we're primarily using Instagram now. That's at While She's Napping. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/While She's Napping, and on Twitter at She's Napping Pod. And you can always email us at whileshe'snapping@gmail.com.
Yeah. So, hey, springtime's here. I feel good. Let's get into cancel culture. How would you like to break this one down?
I think we should start off with the recent, what's been in the news with Mr. Potato Head and Dr. Seuss and some of that stuff. And even, I feel like we're a little bit, like you were saying, cancel culture has been, brought up a lot over the last year.
Well, those are the two things that are being canceled, but the topic of cancel culture is still red hot.
Right. But I'm saying it's like, there's always a new example of people,
right.
something that people are complaining about, either that it's getting canceled or people, you know what I mean? People supporting the thing being canceled. And this seems to be the latest, but I feel like we're already a little bit behind. There's probably going to be a new thing that comes up next week.
Yeah.
But so I think people have kind of heard about this controversy with these two specific things. So we'll start there, and then I think second half we can dive into The Bachelor, because I think less people will be familiar with that. If you're not a viewer of The Bachelor, then you probably haven't really heard about the situation. So yeah, we'll save that for the second half.
All right, let's start with Dr. Seuss, because this is what captured me the most. I didn't really care about Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head, mostly because I don't even know if I had one as a kid, and I just don't resonate with it. But with Dr. Seuss, you know, if it's not Green Eggs and Ham or The Cat in the Hat, I don't care. I don't even know if I read these books that were ended.
It was 6 of his less familiar or less well-known titles, I believe. I hadn't heard of any of them either. And the way that it was portrayed from my perspective was people were just seeing headlines or seeing memes or seeing, you know, like quick things on social media and assuming Dr. Seuss has been canceled. Period. End of story. Like all of Dr. Seuss. Oh, I can't even read my kid Cat in the Hat anymore because apparently it's racist. Like people just make this huge jump and broad brush without understanding what's actually happening.
Right.
And I think the other important point is what you brought up in the very beginning about, I think there's a little bit of a difference between a company or an estate or whoever, a creator,
being forced to cease something.
Yes, like being asked or being demanded if something is brought to their attention and there's a public outcry to take it off the shelves or cancel it, then, you know, that's not what happened in this situation. It was the Dr. Seuss estate, so the people responsible for putting out this content, having an inner reflection or recognition.
I think you're giving it too much credit.
Okay, what do you mean?
I think it was preemptive. I don't know that I buy that they had a come to Jesus moment and said, ooh, this is wrong. I think it was more of, fuck,
oh shit. Yeah.
We need to get rid of this before.
Fair. My point is whether it was, you know, genuine intention to not have like insulting or offensive content, or if it was like well, shit, we don't want people to realize how offensive this content is because it could ruin the brand.
I think it's that.
That's fair. That's probably true. So, but either way, I'm saying it wasn't a result of someone else bringing it to their attention. It was an internal decision.
Oh, at least on a large scale.
From what we know. Yeah,
I'm sure maybe it could have been a lawyer or something in the publishing firm that was like, hey guys.
Right. Someone might have flagged it. Again, because
or someone was genuinely offended and said,
yeah.
Yo.
But those titles were so obscure, like they're not familiar to a lot of people. So it's not like someone had a public outcry over The Cat in the Hat and it was all over social media and there were like petitions to get it canceled. You know what I mean?
So and to think that I saw it on Mulberry Street, if I ran the zoo, also Mick Elligott's pool, yeah, on Beyond Zebra, Scrambled Eggs Super, The Cat's Quizzer. I've never read any of those.
The zoo one sounds a little bit familiar to me, but it might just be from hearing the story.
Never read any of them, and I'm willing to bet that the majority of those that are absolutely outraged about these being quote-unquote canceled never fucking read them either.
Right.
And that's what bothers me the most, is that you have these people that are just, oh, they're canceling The Cat in the Hat. Oh, they're canceling Dr. Seuss. Oh, what's next? The Bible? You never fucking read any of these books.
Right.
None of them.
And I think a lot of times there's this fear of a slippery slope. Like, oh, once they start canceling this, then they're going to start canceling more popular things.
Well, that's the meme. You haven't seen that meme?
What do you mean?
So on one side, it's The Cat in the Hat, and they say they want to cancel this, and before you know it, it will be this, and it's a picture of the Bible. And I just can't get there. I can't understand, you know.
Well, there's context matters, and the audience that's targeted also matters to a certain extent. I mean, the the content in those books is offensive. Like if you've seen the drawings of how they depicted black people and stuff like that, like it's pretty blatant. The thing that I get so frustrated with is when people compare that to like WAP, and people are like, oh, so WAP is cool. No one cares about 50 Shades of Grey, like all this, you know, heavily sexual content that's out and about, like in our mainstream, but we're going to cancel these books. And I'm like, okay, WAP was not written for children. These Dr. Seuss books were written for children.
Okay.
Audience kind of matters.
Yeah. All right, so there's an onion there. Let me. All right. When it comes to these Dr. Seuss books, you know, I have seen images of why it was canceled. I admit, I don't think I've read any of these. All I remember is The Cat in the Hat. The Cat in the Hat comes back, Green Eggs and Ham, because that book had an orange cover, and my favorite color is orange. Or orange, depending on where you live. So those were my jams as a kid. I've seen the images, and there were racially insensitive depictions of black people or people with black faces, I think, in some of these books. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Or they were depicted as monkeys or gorillas.
They had
awful.
Asian stereotypes, I think, in some of these. So I can understand why you want to be preemptive about that. Do I think that necessary? So I'm not, directly impacted by any of this. So my opinion on this doesn't mean anything.
Well, no, because of your experience. But how would you feel if someone got one of those books for our kid for a gift, and you didn't realize the content that was in it, and she was like absorbing that content?
So you can go one of two ways of this. You can completely eliminate it from your stock, right? Which is what Dr. Seuss did.
They stopped publishing it.
Or they changed depictions.
And reissue it?
I think that's what they're doing. But, so we have Disney Plus, and not too long ago you tossed on Lady and the Tramp. And there was a warning in the beginning saying some of these representations might be offensive or regarded as insensitive, but they still broadcast it.
Yeah.
Couldn't Dr. Seuss do the same thing? I'm not saying whether or not they should or shouldn't, and I'm not saying, hey, you should have done this. You should have had a warning label in the front. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, how come Disney gets the pass and Dr. Seuss is like, no, we're throwing these out.
I don't know that Disney gets a pass. I think
they're not being canceled.
No, but I think there's probably some people who are not satisfied with that. But I think on the other hand, there are some people who think, it's an opportunity for learning, like as a parent, you can choose to still put on that movie and then have a conversation with your child.
Couldn't you have done the same with Dr. Seuss?
Yeah, but it's up to
Of course, it's their right whether or not to do it. I'm just saying you're listing the benefits of having that sort of warning, that preemptive thing before the movie, Lady and the Tramp. The first page of the newly published Dr. Seuss, and to think I saw it on Mulberry Street instead of, and again, I don't care one way or the other if they take it out or not. If that's their choice, they want to do it, fine. It doesn't bother me any. I don't care. I care if it offends people. You know what I'm trying to say.
I know.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
If they put a warning label on the front, why is that not good enough?
I think there are several valid opinions on that.
I think there's a direct parallel to that in Lady and the Tramp.
No, I agree. And I think there are, you can have an opportunity to, I think it's just putting it in the hands of the consumer to have that conversation with their child if they choose. But there are also going to be people who ignore the warning, fast forward through it, and just let their kid watch it and don't have that conversation. And in that sense,
I don't know that you can, in fairness.
Okay, you're right. I haven't tried. I don't know. But I'm saying, it doesn't remove the offensiveness of it or the harm in it, because there's no sort of guarantee that conversation is happening,
so I guess
or that
I'm
it's being put into context.
Is Disney dancing on thin ice right now?
I think they could be. I think that's, like I said, I think there are people who think that it's really beneficial that they're keeping it and putting that content warning on there and providing an opportunity for people to have the conversation, because I think there are some people in the camp of that. They don't, they completely disagree with cancel culture because they want things to remain so that we can talk about it and progress and move past it. And if you just eliminate it altogether, there's no conversation to be had because you don't have anything to talk about. But then I think there's also people who, fall with what I was just saying, that the content warning, great, it's up there for 5 seconds or if that, 2 seconds. And then you forget about it and you just watch the movie and the stereotypes are still there and still offensive.
I mean, I didn't forget about it.
No, not us. I'm saying that could happen. Like,
sure,
I think people who hate cancel culture and who are like, oh, Disney's trying to be all PC, putting up this warning. Like, fuck that. I don't care. You can watch this classic movie, and they're never going to talk about it.
This isn't history, right? There's a difference between Dr. Seuss books and Lady and the Tramp compared to having a Confederate soldier.
I wasn't referring to that.
No, I know, but I'm saying this is not even history that is either celebrated or being there as an educational tool. This is just media, right?
Yeah, but there's history in that in the arts.
I'm not saying there's not. I'm saying I think that's the difference, right? When we have statues and stuff and people are like, you can't erase history. We're not erasing history.
We're just not celebrating
We're not celebrating people that shouldn't be celebrated.
Right.
Whereas, when people say, you can't erase Dr. Seuss, you can't erase these books, I don't think you can use the same excuse. I don't think you can say, we're not erasing it, we're just not celebrating it. We're not celebrating it. Like, having books published isn't akin to putting up a statue. There's no celebration. It's just a publish, right?
Yeah.
So I think...
But they're not erasing it because they're not saying every copy of the book that exists needs to be burned.
No, but I don't know that having a warning label on the newly published books wouldn't have been sufficient.
Maybe. I don't really have a strong opinion on it. I think that the fact that it's being addressed in whatever capacity the company is deciding to do that is progress. Like, just the fact whether it's stopped.
I have no problem with their decision.
Right. I'm saying, but if they had just chosen to do a content warning kind of like Disney did, like when I saw that on Disney when we put on Lady and the Tramp, I didn't know that they were doing it. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't really know what to think of it. Part of me was like, well, then why am I about to show this to my kid? And then the other part of me was like, okay, that's good to know, because the last time I watched this movie, I was a child and I don't remember these stereotypes. And it almost gives me an opportunity as an adult to watch it with a different perspective and be
I think
more
that's
attentive.
Beneficial.
Yeah, and understand, and the fact that I did take in this content as a child without ever realizing it or thinking there was anything wrong with it is the problem with these types of things being shown to children.
I don't know. I think you can excuse that as youthful ignorance.
No, I agree, but I'm saying, like, it contributes to our subconscious and unconscious bias.
Part. Yeah, I get
and
you.
Implicit bias, because you're consuming these stereotypes and you're being taught these incorrect and offensive things about people.
I get it.
And that carries through your life.
So I do want to be clear here. They are a private institution, they being the Dr. Seuss conglomerate, whatever, publishers, whatever. They can make this choice. The government did not make them do this. The PC culture did not call for this. They did this on their own free will. Therefore, I don't regard this as cancel culture. They were never canceled.
No, and it's not like the whole brand is getting canceled. And like I said, it's not like they're destroying the copies that exist. They're just choosing not to publish it anymore.
Right. I think there were more people upset vocally than people celebrating the decision. Like, more people bitched about it than praised it.
Yeah, I think because the people who support the decision are like, yeah, okay, that's logical. And they move on with their day. But the people who are pissed about it are going to jump online and complain.
Let's move on to Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head. So in my limited understanding of this, they are still calling and producing Mr. and Mrs. Potato Heads, but they are regarding them as not male and female?
My understanding is that they are changing the name of the brand to just be Potato Head, because Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head have both existed for, together. Mr. Potato Head probably came first, maybe. I'm not sure about that. But the point is, they have other items, other characters than just Mr. Potato Head. But the whole line, the whole brand is called Mr. Potato Head. So my interpretation is that they are just changing. So that line of toys is just called Potato Head.
Yes, that's what it is.
And then they have multiple characters.
So, shout out to Hasbro, Rhode Island's own Hasbro, at least for now. Yeah, you're exactly right. So the brand name was Mr. Potato Head. So what they would do is Mr. Potato Head presents Mrs. Potato Head. It wasn't, the actual doll Mr. Potato Head. So it's sort of like, I don't know, you can't really use Barbie as an example. Well, I guess you can. Like Barbie dolls has a Ken.
Right.
Right. Or I think Skipper, if I remember what my sister used to play with as a child.
I think that's Barbie's sister.
Yeah, whatever. So they have, under the Barbie name.
Yeah, there's tons of
other dolls.
characters.
So it will be Potato Head name presents Mrs. Potato Head or Mr. Potato Head. So they're not getting rid of the genderized.
Right. It's not like
version.
You can't get a Mr. or Mrs. Potato Head and all the potatoes are gender neutral. That's not what's happening.
Yeah. So a lot of people freaked out about this, but to me, this is nothing.
Logical. It's like an accurate description of the line of toys.
Well, it doesn't matter to me either way. I don't know that this was more of, a preventative measure like Dr. Seuss was, when they were just thinking we produce multiple versions of potato heads, so we should just call our brand Potato Head. I don't think this had anything to do with a preemptive strike or whatever.
Or trying to make the brand more PC. Yes. Or, maybe it was meant to be more inclusive in the sense of like not giving, not like putting the Mr. Potato Head on the pedestal of being like Mr. Potato Head presents Mrs. Potato Head. Like, you know what I mean? Like there could be an element of that, but I don't even know.
I
don't even think that that's there's no way to know without being in the minds of the people who made this decision. But I feel like that it was just sort of a rebranding because it is logical, because it describes the line of toys.
Right.
Like, I think the potato, like the base of the toy, is a gender neutral potato. And then you have
gender neutral sounds like a terrible term for that. It's void of gender.
Void of sure. Yeah. Right. My point is, then there are accessories that are sold.
Yes.
Where you can
dress it up.
Yes. And there's different combinations. Like there's no reason you can't put like the kissy lips from Mrs. Potato Head
on the Mr.
and the mustache from Mr. Potato Head. Like, there's plenty of, like openness in that. Like it's a potato.
I got it. Yeah.
Like, I don't understand why that was such a big deal, but I do think it's because, again, similar to Dr. Seuss, people read the headlines, read a quick one sentence or saw a meme, and assumed that Mr. Potato Head no longer existed. Like, right. I think people thought, oh, well, if I have a Mr. Potato Head, it's going to be worth something because they're not making Mr. Potato Head anymore,
Yeah, this one doesn't bother me. And again, more people got outraged over it to the point where Hasbro had to send out a tweet saying, relax, we're still making both.
Right.
Calm the fuck down.
And others. It's not even just Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head. There are other
babies
ones.
And stuff. Other examples include Mrs. Butterworth's. They stopped that. I wouldn't say canceled because the company just stopped. Mrs. Butterworth's was canceled. What's the one?
It's Aunt Jemima.
Aunt Jemima. No, yeah. Aunt Jemima was canceled. Mrs. Butterworth's
does the company not exist?
Which is the bottle? The woman. Is that Mrs. Butterworth's?
I can't remember. Yeah, one of them, the bottle is shaped like the woman, and
the
other one, it's just the logo has like the picture of her face. I think Aunt Jemima is the one with the picture of her face.
Yes, and they ended that a while ago.
Yeah.
And same thing with Uncle Ben.
Yeah.
They ended that. Mrs. Butterworth's took it upon themselves, I think, to end the bottle. So
the company didn't they didn't cease to exist. They're rebranding or repackaging.
They're
their product.
repackaging. And again, I don't understand the outrage. All right. And
Me
again, I can't speak for whether or not this is offensive. I don't think that's up for me to decide. Right. Because my ethnicity isn't being challenged here or represented in a commercialized way or an inaccurate way.
Well, I don't know that it's even that. I think, and we touched on this in the first episode that we did on cancel culture, because that was when this conversation was kind of just heating up about the syrups and stuff. But there, from the perspective of, it represents a time when Black people were not free. Like, and they're depicting these people that are the face of their brand, and they're using them to sell their product when the true stories behind these people, the stories aren't pretty. Like, these people were enslaved.
I get it.
And it's a horrible reminder. Like, imagine if this is totally anecdotal, just one person's perspective. But I was listening to another podcast that is hosted by a Black woman, and she was describing her experience when she goes down the grocery aisle and what that does to her when she sees stuff like that. And it, like, who wants that for someone to not be able to go grocery shopping without feeling like you're being othered in that sense?
I get it. I understand. And for me, nostalgically, and again, is this worth more than someone being, personally offended by it? No,
of course not.
But nostalgically, as a kid, I used to love that bottle. And it's not, because...
Well, it's just like I like the honey that comes in the bear bottle.
Yeah, it's just, there's a person here. It's shaped like a person. I never made the connection to, this is what slaves were like. I never made that connection. It was just, this is a person on the bottle, so therefore it's cool. It's kind of like a toy. Right. So when people are like, there goes our childhood, I'm thinking, what the... Your childhood was based on just a bottle of syrup? There are better syrups out there. I'm telling you there are, and we consume them. I like the real deal.
We live in New
stuff.
England, so we can get real maple syrup.
That's what I'm saying. I
locally
prefer the real deal. And my buddy was like, there goes Mrs. Butterworth. I'm like, I don't eat that.
Who cares?
This is legit just sugar. Yeah. I don't eat that shit. I don't want it. And it's not because of the depiction of the bottle. I'll admit that. It's because the product is just garbage. So I'd rather have the real deal. I just like the taste of real maple syrup better.
Right. I don't think people are attached to the flavor of Mrs. Butterworth or Aunt Jemima's, and that's what they're missing.
I hate the hyperbolic, there goes my childhood.
Yeah. Well, again, I think it's just people who, I think it's like here goes another thing. I'm over this PC bullshit. Like, can't say anything anymore. Can't even have my breakfast without being told I'm a racist because I'm using Aunt Jemima's.
No,
like,
no one's saying that.
I know, but that's how people spin it and like make it something that it's not. It's like, or we are just making progress as a society because we're really not that far from a time in our history where Black people did not have the same rights as white people, and we are still in a time where communities of color are fighting for equal rights and equal treatment and trying to get out of being systemically oppressed for how many ever hundreds of years. So I don't think it's a lot to ask for you to buy a different fucking syrup.
So the only pushback I can, maybe give to this, there was an article on, reference.com says Mrs. Butterworth is neither black or white, and that's how it was designed. And the initial voice was voiced by a white woman. So I can see where people are saying this could just be a white woman, but the syrup is dark.
But the character, that whole character, same thing with Aunt Jemima, is like...
Well, Aunt Jemima is blatantly a black woman.
Right, but I'm saying, but it's all based in that character of like the nanny who was a slave. I'm
just telling you what the company said.
Yeah. But
regardless. To me, it's, if you're gonna get that upset about products, I don't know what to tell you. I can't relate. I just can't. I don't care about the change of products. If a company is preemptively saying, look, even if this was the reason, look, this is going to be really bad
Right,
for
it's
us
just a
in the
PR
future.
move.
Yeah, but I would hope this isn't the case, but if the president of the company is like, look, I don't care if it's there, but I know if I keep it, I'm going to lose money, so I don't want to lose my shirt. Let's change it. I think that's a bad reason, but even if that's the reason, I kind of get it because it makes business sense, and you want to make sure just purely you want to sell your product. You don't want your product to represent something offensive because then it's not lucrative. It's just not. And that shouldn't morally or ethically be the primary reason, your end of the day bottom line when it comes to income or how much product you're selling. But in a business sense, it makes sense in this society today to be preemptive about these things.
Yeah, I guess it's just that, a company like that can continue to sell their product. They can rebrand.
Of course.
And right. And it goes back to what we were talking about.
Know if it was a legitimate ethical reason. You never know.
You can't. Right. But what I'm saying is, it goes back to the whole, like, we're not canceling these brands or these companies. They are rebranding their product to progress with the times, and there will always be pictures of the old Mrs. Butterworth bottle or the Aunt Jemima label, like whatever. It's not destroying history. It's not anything like that. It's literally an opportunity for us to be better. And we're not calling for these companies to be bankrupt or to go out of business because they ever produced something that was offensive. It's if they are making the progress and they are making changes to make their product less offensive to people. Right. That's a good thing.
All right, let's take a pause here. On the other side, we'll talk about the Bachelor/Bachelorette controversy. Hang tight.
All right, so we've mentioned many times that we participate in a Bachelor Fantasy League. I'm a longtime fan, watcher, consumer of the Bachelor franchise and all the shows. And but Adam was new to it this year when we started doing the Fantasy League. So he had a lot of catching up to do. So I think some of the background about the how the show has approached diversity and the lack of contestants of color on the show has been a conversation for many years. I mean, the show's been running for 20 something years. It's got quite the history.
I don't know.
But it's just over the last few years. I think it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago they had their first Black Bachelorette, Rachel Lindsay. And that was a big move for the franchise. And sort of, since then, she has sort of been the voice for pushing the franchise to be more intentional about welcoming contestants of color. And that's sort of been the conversation. But that apparently has been a challenge. And there's a lot of internal struggle with trying to undo like 15 or 20 years of excluding people of color from the show. So that was kind of like the background of all of this, like the stuff that's been bubbling under the surface. And then just recently, in the wake of 2020 and this whole refocusing on racial inequality in America, there's been more open conversation about it. And the show has really tried to make it obvious and make it publicly known that they're addressing these things. And so I think that's kind of where this conversation ended up coming from.
Sure.
So, so there was an interview done between Rachel Lindsay, who was the Bachelorette several years ago, and Chris Harrison, who's been the host of the show since day one. And it was about a recent contestant who's had some problematic photos emerge on social media while the season that she was on was airing. And I'm not going to get into the details of what this exchange was like. It's like a 15-minute interview between Rachel and Chris. And we can post a link to that in our Instagram stories. But essentially, Chris Harrison defended the contestant who had the problematic social media content emerge. And the content was very, it was basically of her attending an Old South antebellum plantation party in college. And then I guess that was the main one. And then there was a couple of other ones, like her standing in front of a Confederate flag and stuff like that. So it was not pretty and not something that, she had spoken out on at the time. And everyone was just kind of speculating, like, what does she have to say about this? What is the story behind these pictures? What's the deal? Especially since she was dating the Bachelor at the time was a black man and she was a front runner. And so it was a really like interesting, situation. So during the interview, Chris Harrison was basically blindly defending it. He used terms like the woke police are coming after her and attacking her. It's like a pack of lions just because of these pictures from 2018. And Rachel Lindsay pointed out, well, it's just, we don't understand all the details. She hasn't spoken out on it yet. However, it's just not a good look, like objectively speaking.
I can get there.
Yeah. And he responded with, well, is it not a good look in 2020 or was it not a good look in 2018? And she's like, okay, so you think that racism didn't exist in 2018, like that this wouldn't be problematic? Like it was.
So is that his way of saying in 2018 we were unaware largely of this being an issue?
Yes, he was saying like it's justified for her to have been ignorant in 2018 because we didn't have such a focused lens on racism like we do after what happened in 2020.
I don't think that's entirely untrue.
It doesn't excuse it, though.
I'm not saying it does. I think there's a lot of truth in saying things that we did in 2018 that we weren't even realizing were racially insensitive. Now we are aware of
Yes, but that's wrong. The fact that we didn't recognize it in 2018.
Yeah, but I'm saying the failure of recognition is true in 2018. We failed to recognize that this was a racist thing to do. That is true. Largely.
Well, we should just talk about her and her situation. And she has since come out and spoken on it. And that's basically what she says.
I'm not excusing her.
Well, that's the difference, is that he was kind of chalking it up. He wasn't holding her accountable in any sense. It was like, well, we don't know what she thought. Maybe she just thought she was showing up in a pretty dress and she didn't realize. It's like, no, if you're showing up to an Old South antebellum plantation party, you are celebrating what the South was before the Civil War. On a plantation.
In fairness, until we watched this past week's episode, I had no idea what antebellum meant.
Okay, but she's from the South, and she knows.
I'm just saying,
what it meant.
For someone like me, I didn't know. I didn't know this was race. If you showed me pictures before this happened of people dressing in those Southern dresses, I wouldn't be like, that signifies. I wouldn't know.
But if you knew it was a celebration of the Old South,
I wouldn't even put that together.
Okay, so that speaks to how we've failed in educating ourselves.
This is a learning experience for me.
Totally get it. Yes, I understand that. But I guess what I'm saying is you can acknowledge that and you can say, like, we sucked at understanding these things before 2020.
Yes.
And it was wrong for us not to make those connections. But he wasn't saying that. He was excusing it. So, like, I feel like that's where the line is crossed. Like, you can acknowledge that it wasn't done maliciously. It wasn't, intentionally meant to offend people. It was done out of ignorance, but it's wrong that we were that ignorant. That is a bad thing that we need to correct. And it's a shame that was the case as recently as 2018.
I'm willing to bet, and again, I'm not excusing her. I'm willing to bet her attending that party wasn't racially motivated.
Right. I don't think it was, but that almost makes it worse.
Yeah, it's racially ignorant.
Yeah.
Right?
It's
I
like
don't
that
think
white
she went
people
to
are
this party saying, I really hate black people, so I'm going to dress up
But
like
the fact
this
that
today.
that's so normalized in her community and
is the problem.
Yes.
I get it.
Yes.
I'm
totally.
with you there. I'm just saying, if I'm not defending Chris Harrison, I guess what I'm saying is, I forget his name, who hosted
Emmanuel Acho.
he said, this act doesn't necessarily make you a racist person, but what you did was racially insensitive.
Yes. Totally.
And that's where I'm sort of, I don't want to say I'm even skating the line. I don't agree with people saying, she's a racist. I'm like, I don't know that I'll go that far, because she probably didn't fucking know, because I didn't know.
Right. No, but I think sometimes when people say you're a racist, it's more of like, that is a racist act, or that is a racist thing to say, or that is racially insensitive is a better way to describe it. Because you're not saying like, but I think the thing is that racism doesn't need malicious intent to be racist. Like, something can be racist even without the malicious intent.
I think the act can be racist almost accidentally, if not completely accidentally. Like I said, I don't think she
without
woke up
malicious
that day
intent
and said, I hate black people, gonna put on this dress to
Yes.
really express that. I don't think that was going through her mind. But upon reflection, if she said, like, now with all this backlash, if she came out and said, it's my culture, that's what we do, I'd be like, all right, pump the brakes, bitch. Like, that is bad.
And that's kind
But she didn't.
And Chris Harrison didn't say those exact words, but he kind of skated that line, because he said, like,
Yes.
well, this was, I mean, how many people were having parties like this in 2018? Like, it was
Probably
normal.
a lot.
Right, but he said it like an excuse, like, it's okay because so many people did it. Like, anyway, this is a really deep conversation. And I think I talked about on one of our previous episodes, when this was really like in the thick of it, a few other people who have done like full breakdowns of the interview, and you can watch the interview for yourself. But so this was like a month ago now since this interview happened, and the action. So we were going to link this into cancel culture, because Chris Harrison some people are saying that he's being canceled, but what's happening is, after that interview and after the backlash, he decided to step away, that he would not participate in the After the Final Rose, which is like the special finale or special recap after the finale of the Bachelor season. And that ended up being hosted by Emmanuel Acho.
Yeah.
And then Chris Harrison released a statement like, I'm very sorry for the way that I came across in that interview, and my ignorance and the things I said and hurting people. It was not my intention. And I'm basically taking a step back so I can educate myself and learn and try to make it so I don't do this again.
I think that's a fair response.
I do too. But I also, part of me is, I'm frustrated because this isn't the first time he said something like this. And this isn't the first time he's been called out on it. But it's the first time that the Bachelor franchise has actually taken a step to pull him out of the spotlight long enough for him to do something meaningful and learn something meaningful. And
well, I think because of the events of 2020.
Yeah.
The response vocally and sociologically is a lot louder, because a lot more people are becoming more aware of the issues, right? And
refuse to tolerate it.
Right. I'm not trying to pull a Chris Harrison here, but if this conversation was had in 2018,
it was.
He probably still would have been hosting.
That's what I'm
show.
saying. But these conversations had been happening ever since Rachel Lindsay was the Bachelorette.
He said the exact same thing in 2018, I think people would say something in response, but I just don't think the large community of viewers would say it as loud.
No, but I think that's why people aren't like, oh, well, that's a good response. That's a good statement that Chris made.
No.
Hold on,
I'm talking about the interview.
Yeah, but I'm saying, you're saying the reason why he's getting the pushback and there's such a, people are sort of demanding that he take a step back in a way that he never has before, is because it's never been this much at the forefront, and there's never been this many people engaged in these conversations.
The latter, not the former. I think the amount of people having the awareness now is much larger than it was in 2018.
Right. So Bachelor Nation finally has the pressure that they needed to do something like this, like pull him out of the spotlight. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't have done it 5 years ago when all the times that they were problematic contestants who had racially insensitive history.
Yeah. I'm not excusing their failure to act previously.
Right. But I'm saying, like you said, when I just summarized some of the points from Chris's statement, you were like, well, I think that's fair. And it is. But at the same time, it's like, that doesn't really mean much because you've had many opportunities to make a statement like that and to do the work that you're saying you're going to do now.
In fairness, I had no idea.
I know. You're kind of ignorant to the whole history behind it.
I had no idea that this has been an issue with him before.
Yeah. Well, him and, like I said, just other contestants. Like,
right.
There's a long history. And there's an Instagram account called Batch Diversity. So at Batch Diversity. And they posted, I'm sure they saved it in their highlights, they posted all the receipts from all of the times that there's been an outcry about some issue with race within the Bachelor franchise. And I was trying to scroll through it. There were so many stories. There was like 100 receipts.
But you would agree that if this has been a longstanding issue, you would agree for good reason. You know, this doesn't excuse. I'm not saying, I don't want this to get lost in the shuffle. I'm not saying this wasn't a big deal before. It certainly was. Mm-hmm. I'm saying the pressure because of what has been unfolded and because of now there's a larger awareness.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. They couldn't ignore it.
In 2018, I guess in their shitty way, they being ABC or Bachelor or whoever's in charge, had the ability to sweep it under the rug and be like, pay attention to this over here. Don't pay attention. You know, now because people are like, no, fuck that. We're going to pay attention and we're going to demand
hold you accountable.
Action.
Yeah.
Yeah. He can't avoid.
Yes. I see what you're saying. I understand. Right. And so now he stepped back from after the final rose and people were already saying, oh, you canceled Chris Harrison. I'm not going to watch The Bachelor anymore.
Then don't
it's
watch.
Like, bye, Karen. Okay.
Then don't watch. That's what I'm saying. Don't watch.
Like, fine. Because there are plenty of people of color who have never felt like they were welcomed into the franchise, like whether you wanted to be a contestant or whether you were just a viewer. Like, this show was for white people for 20 years.
Yeah, sure.
And so, God forbid, Chris Harrison has to not participate in one episode without you bitching about it.
That's just like Butterworth. Like, how are you this connected to a host of a show? No. I'm just saying, like, it bothers you that much?
Well, there are some people who, like I said, the show has never been without him. He is such an integral part.
Who cares?
I know, but I'm saying, like, people who are diehard fans of the show, I can understand, like, there's a little bit of like, well, it's not the same without him. It's like, okay, but you'll get over it. Like, you can still watch the show.
So,
like,
Emmanuel
Acho.
Okay. I like him, and I was saying this to you when we watched it. I like him in
he does uncomfortable conversations with a black man.
Yeah. Great. He's really good at having conversation, but as a host, just strictly as a host, I was like, I don't know. I don't like his delivery.
It was different. It's a different it's a different setting.
Yeah.
And I think this part of the reason
that doesn't disqualify him.
No, but part of the reason why I think they chose him was because this was inevitably going to turn into an uncomfortable conversation.
I get it.
Between a white person and Matt James, the Black Bachelor. And
by the way, take it from a beardsman. You got to shave that beard.
Yeah, the beard's not for him.
Working.
No, I agree. That's what, when I saw the previews of him, I was like,
working.
Oh, they definitely didn't stay together. That's a single man's beard.
No,
he looks like he's struggling.
And you have opportunities to get that shaped and stuff. No, it's got to go. But all right, so I want to talk about that with the time we have left. I appreciate the fact that those in charge of The Bachelor are making the decision of having a person of color, in those opportunities.
Well, I think it's not just that; it's that his whole thing is
I get it. Yes.
Having uncomfortable conversations about race.
And the next Bachelorette, it's a split. It's 2 seasons: a white woman and a black woman.
Yep,
each getting their own season.
And the new host of those seasons. So it makes sense now why they named 2 hosts to replace Chris Harrison is because there's 2 bachelorettes. So one of them is one is a black woman and one is a white woman.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's something to me a little disingenuous about that. To me, it just seems like corporate. we got to find the
a token,
the black guy that's in the know about race issues and have him host the show.
I don't think it.
To me, I'm just like, I understand why you would, but. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have a person of color. I'm not saying,
No, I think that it needs to. I think making the intentional effort to
corporately, it irks me.
Yeah, but I think it's the right thing to do because they've had such a long history of excluding black voices.
I guess I would get someone. I would include a black person or a person of color that doesn't have as wide of a reach as Emmanuel, like someone that is new and can develop a new career. You know what I'm saying?
Maybe, but I feel like this was, again, because of the topic at hand and because he's so skilled in having these difficult conversations.
I get it.
He was like an obvious fit.
So for this, yes, maybe if it's for the next Bachelor, if it's not him that's hosting an after the final Rose show and they're just a black man hosting the Bachelor, I get it, but to me, there was just something corporate of, we got to get that black guy that's in the know. It's just like let's go get Don King.
Well, people felt that way about them naming Matt James as the first black Bachelor.
Because was he on a previous show?
No.
That's what I'm saying.
No, but they don't normally do that. They usually pick a contestant from the previous season who didn't win, like a runner-up or one of the top 3, and that contestant becomes the new Bachelor or Bachelorette. Matt James has never been on any of the Bachelor shows. He's a friend of a previous contestant who was very popular.
Yeah,
and so people kind of felt like, they felt like they had to pick a black guy, so they just picked this guy because...
I can appreciate that. I can appreciate the randomness of it. And I'm not a Bachelor person.
I think that some interpretations were that it was so far removed from the normal routine that it seemed like they were going out of their way to cast a black Bachelor. But that is what people were asking for. I think that the thing is that it can't just be a one-off thing. It can't be like, okay, 2020 happened. We picked a black Bachelor. We picked a black Bachelorette with Tayshia. And, okay, we checked our box. Like, no. Because now and the problem is that those things happened. And then this interview with Chris Harrison happened. Yes. And it just exposed, like, okay, so they haven't been really doing the work. Maybe they did sort of like tokenize Tayshia and Matt James by picking black people as leads because they thought it would make them look good and satisfy the outcry.
I want to be clear. I have no issues with them picking black people to be contestants. Of course not.
You're just pointing out that
it just seems corporate.
It seems like a PR stunt.
It definitely does.
I know what you're saying, and I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying because Chris Harrison came out with that interview right after they did these like supposed like progressive moves of casting more black people, more people of color in general for the contestants as well, not just the leads. But then Chris Harrison came out with this ridiculously insensitive interview and like gaslighting Rachel Lindsay all over the place, like telling her she had nothing to be upset about.
Yes.
Like it was just so apparent that they haven't done shit internally to address this.
I get it. Again, when it comes to Manuel, I'm sorry.
Acho.
Yeah. I just keep... The Bills like just signed. The Bills just signed Emmanuel Sanders, and that's all. Yeah. I want to say Sanders.
Yeah, just say Emmanuel.
Yeah,
we know now who we're talking about.
I understand. He was probably the best fit for that
situation
thing.
Yeah,
and I said this to you: if that was a side session, having that conversation, and someone else hosting the final Rose portion,
but there was nothing else.
I know it's really hard to separate those things. I'm just saying, to me, it just seems like corporate. Got to get that guy that talks about black issues.
I know why you would like interpret it that way, but I don't think that's what it was. And I think the fact that
he was fine. Don't get me wrong. It was fine.
It was a good. I mean, they had the conversation. Yeah. So I think now it's coming out with. So it wasn't just for the After the Final Rose special. Now it's also the next season of the Bachelorette or the like double season. Where Chris Harrison's not going to be the host, and they don't know if this is going to be a permanent thing. I feel what I feel like is going to happen is, okay, Chris Harrison is getting canceled in the sense that he's no longer going to be the host of The Bachelor because he is no longer the right fit, because he is not in tune with our like modern society and culture. Like
no, he'll come back. They always come back.
Maybe, but I feel like what they're Well, first of all, I think it makes perfect sense for him to be stepping back if he truly wants to do all this work that he said he was going to do, that supposedly he's been trying to do for the last several years. It obviously hasn't gone anywhere, so he does need to take a step back and focus on it if he's going to come back and be a good host that is sensitive to people of color and not making offensive remarks. Like, you can't be a good host of a diverse cast if you act like this.
I understand.
So I think what they're doing now is with having the two hosts of the upcoming season, they are both previous bachelorettes. And I think they might move into that pattern of having previous bachelor or bachelorettes host the next season, because they can relate, and they're more like facilitators, I guess, than like a host.
I'm saying he will never be removed entirely.
Well, the last 20 seasons with him on there still exist.
No. That's not what I mean. I'm saying, if anything, if he's not on camera, he'll be behind.
Maybe, yeah, he can still be involved. He'll have a job.
Producer or something like that.
He'll have a job.
Yes.
He's also an author, apparently, of some like really terrible, trashy novels.
I don't know.
I've heard they're not good. I haven't read them.
This person other than these past
There's nothing
2
wrong
seasons.
with erotic novels, for the record, but apparently his are not good.
I don't have a stake in the game. All I know is that I'm winning championships when it comes to this, so it doesn't matter.
So the bottom line,
I say that in jest. It matters.
The thing I wanted to point out about this is that people who say, I don't like cancel culture, I don't think it's right, I'm all about accountability culture and people being held accountable when they do something wrong. I think this is a good example of that happening. I think it's well overdue. I think there's been issues within the Bachelor franchise for a long time, and they're finally addressing it. And I don't think it's overkill for him to be brought out of the spotlight so that he can address these issues. But I do understand, if you don't know the whole background and how long this has been going on, that it might seem that way at first. But I think this is the perfect example of people being held accountable. And I will say, so for Rachel Kirkconnell, who was the contestant that had the problematic social media posts, I mean, I hope she's genuine in the way that she talked, but it does sound like she's also taking accountability for what she did. You will
never know.
You will never know. That's why I can only say ostensibly, based on what we can see and what she's saying.
I get it.
Her actions will speak louder, but so far it seems like she's also not being canceled. She's being held accountable, and she's being asked tough questions.
Yeah.
And she's responding, I think, in a responsible way. But yeah, I think that this is a good example of the whole people being held accountable, not being canceled, not saying you can never have another job again, you'll never be on TV again.
I get it.
But you're being held accountable.
Yeah.
To be better.
I should say, I don't necessarily agree with cancel culture. I think sometimes it gets out of hand depending on what it is. Like, again, if you go back to our original episode about this, or our first episode about this, I said, Tom Brady in 2016 voted for Trump. At knowing that before 2020 election, knowing that, should he be canceled because he voted for Trump? Because apparently if you're a Trump supporter, you're canceled on things. And I said, is it possible to just not like the other candidate and want a Republican in office? And to continue...
You're bringing this up at the end of the episode?
No. And because of... That's what I said then. I'm saying now, no, because of how things unfolded with the Republican Party and how it's more a Trumpian party. No, there's no longer that, traditional conservative value. It's buried in there a little bit, but by and large, it's just Trumpism. That's what you're supporting. So,
and that's where a lot of this cancel culture was highlighted at CPAC this year.
I don't know that those individuals should necessarily, like, for instance, someone like Tim Allen, if he wants to have a show on Fox and those Trumpists want to watch it, fine. But if people are like, I'm not fucking watching him anymore because he's a Trump supporter, I kind of get it. I kind of get it now. But at the same time, sometimes it gets overboard, right? So people are, I brought this up and we can wrap it up here. Gen Zs are like, fuck Eminem. He has songs about tying up in Love the Way You Lie.
Oh, the Rihanna song? Yeah.
Like tying up someone and blowing the house down. Like, why are you tying up? And I'm just like, there's context when it comes to Eminem. Like, that is his shtick, to be controversial. And if that's what you're pointing out, that is not even the least.
Right.
Like, maybe it's the least, but that is.
I mean, it's pretty violent. But again, But there are violent movies. There are violent books.
I'm not explaining it well. It has something about tying down a woman and.
Oh, okay. So it's like a misogynistic, like domestic
but I'm just
violence
like,
thing.
That's been his shtick, and it's part of his. If you listen to really early Eminem, it's
messed up.
Yeah. Yes, but I don't know. I on the one hand, I'm thinking he was a kid, and not to excuse any of this, I'm saying he was a kid back in the 90s. That's just what was around in that type of vernacular was just present. And I'm speaking from me, and I'm sure a lot of people, we're not proud of it, and we've learned from it, but that's just part of the way things were back then. I'm not defending it. It's not good, but it's just, what are we supposed to do? Say, Eminem, you did something in 1997, therefore we're canceling you in 2021? I think even he today is like, yeah, that shit was fucked up back then.
Right. He's not producing that content
He's
now.
not defending it.
Yeah.
He's not saying, no, that's what I'm doing. Like, again, I think that is something where you look at the type of person he is now and the type of content he's producing. He's obviously moved away and learned from it. So should we cancel someone that has learned from it already?
No, because then they've already been held accountable.
That's what I'm saying. And so Gen Zs are like, look at this thing from 1997 that he produced. And even he today is like, yeah, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
I'm not proud of it. I don't think that person deserves to be canceled.
Yeah.
You're saying I'm not proud of it.
And you're not doing it anymore.
What else do you want from him? Do you want him to be jobless? Like,
yeah. Right.
That's going out for blood at that point,
Right. Yeah. Well, I think the whole thing about, there's some content that's just objectively wrong, no matter who the audience is. Right. I'm not taking that away, but I'm also
defending
saying
him.
Right, I know, but I'm saying, back to like, I've also seen people saying, "Oh, we have a problem with Dr. Seuss, but WAP is okay." Like, well, I don't let my kid listen to WAP. Like,
no, but I do have an issue, and maybe this is just me being old. I do have an issue with Cardi B and whoever, like, sort of scissoring on stage at the Grammys or whatever.
But that's
I'm like,
not a children's show.
No, I know, but I'm just like, I don't know, even on cable network, that's an appropriate thing to do.
Okay, like, then don't watch.
No, but are you serious? Like, if come on, there's some things that you need to be like, okay, that is inappropriate, even to just, if you have porn on at 10 on cable, it's like free TV, you can't be like, oh, just change the channel. People will be like, no, that shouldn't be available. That should not be on there.
24/7 on the internet.
You know what I mean?
I mean, I don't think it's as, like I said, just that type of content is widely available right now to anybody at any time.
I know, but there are standards and practices with was it SEC or whatever? The FCC when it comes to things on cable news or...
Sure. Okay. So maybe that's blurring the line a little bit. Like, I get that. But I'm just saying there are people who are defending Dr. Seuss and Mr. Potato Head and saying like, oh, these are our biggest issues in our society that we have to cancel these things. But we're okay with WAP.
Well, WAP
like,
is just
yes, we're okay with WAP.
Yeah, but there are, again, I go back to, there are way worse things written.
And it's not meant for children. It's not a children's toy. It's not a children's book. It's adult music. Like,
right.
Don't let your kids listen to WAP.
No, I agree with you there. And, but at the same time, are we saying now, because I would have never thought, well, you shouldn't have let your kids watch the Grammys. I mean, I would have.
Sure. Yeah, I know this. I understand what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying? I would have never thought that.
I'm just saying, when a children's thing gets canceled, don't compare it to an adult thing.
I get it, but I'm saying I think that act as a parent, and if me and our child, she's 2, but if she was older, I was like, hey, let's watch the
Grammys,
and then you see 2 women sort of scissoring, obviously in a dance. I'd be like, that's. Like, I shouldn't have that expectation that this act is going to happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, you disagree?
I think this is another conversation for another podcast.
But also, I don't have a problem with it.
Of course you don't.
No, I'm just saying, at this point, I can understand why there's a parent to be like,
that's a little much.
If that happened at the Super Bowl, I'd be like,
Oh, you mean like when Janet Jackson was exposed?
But that's
and
different.
Justin Timberlake had no fault in it?
No, that's blatant nudity and probably unwanted nudity now in hindsight.
Yeah.
But if they were performing at the Super Bowl and did that, I'd be like, no, this is for families.
Right,
like,
right. Yeah.
This is
That's
not the platform for that. You can do that on the internet and
on the music
can
video
choose to click it, but you shouldn't be doing that on a publicly available thing. I think.
Well, we can talk about this. I think it's another episode topic specifically about sexuality in the media and
their empowerment, and I understand what the song is about. I get that, but I do think there is some sort of I don't know, that sort of blurs the line.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from.
All right, let's wrap it up here.
Yeah.
Okay, so next week we are celebrating 1 year of While She's Napping. We appreciate everybody that has listened up until this point. Whether you hopped on midway through just now or whenever, we appreciate it. And next week we're going to celebrate by sort of overviewing our favorite times on the show, our favorite episodes and stuff. And
we're going to put a poll out for you to tell us what your favorite episodes were and which ones, if there are topics that you'd like us to revisit. Like this was a cancel culture part 2 because there were new things being canceled,
Sure.
Yeah. So watch out for those.
Yeah, and you can find those
on Instagram at While She's Napping, on Facebook at facebook.com/While She's Napping, on Twitter at She's Napping Pod. Or if you want to just tell us what you think through email, it's at whileshe'snapping@gmail.com.
Listen, for the record, I do enjoy a good WAP. That's all. Yeah. Just saying. I have no problem with it.
I know.
Better than a DAP?
Yeah. I concur.
Anyway, I'll see you next week.
Bye.